Welcome to the last day, day 4 of the 2022 final of the Global Professional Challenge, the #1 supply chain management challenge in the world. In this final, the participants, the best performing participants from companies across the world who participated in supply chain management training with the business simulation game, the Fresh Connection, come together. 47 teams we have this year, so almost 200 participants, bigger than ever, come together online to benchmark themselves really at a global scale. I think I said global a lot, but I think that's what
it is truly global.
It is truly global. And that's not everything. So we have this final this week. It's the last day. So we are really excited to, at the end of the day, also look at the winners of this 2022 Global Professional Final. But I'm not on my own. My name is Noah Schaul, Director of Corporate Trainings here at InChange. But I'm joined by my colleague Hans Kremer and also by Frans Pannekoek, who I will introduce in a moment when introducing the first topic. So we'll introduce the guests today one by one. And first I would like to give you the floor, Hans. Not to introduce InChange, but actually to ask you a question, to make this a bit more of a conversation style. That's also the ambition of today. So we don't only have finalists with us today, we also have many viewers and supporters, because we will have a hopefully very nice conversation about supply chain sustainability. So we'll dive more into this. But before going there, maybe Hans, if you can share a bit more on impact and behavior change, because those topics become more important than ever.
Yeah. So when we started InChange, and when we said, when we want to train and teach people more about supply chain and value chain, we came up with business simulations. We passionately believe in experiential learning. If you can give people an experience, you stand a good chance of creating impact and change their behavior when it comes to how they behave professionally and how to potentially make their value chains and supply chains run better. But that became more and more urgent in our view, because first of all, we said, well, let's simply try and help make supply chains and value chains run better. Until we learn about that, most value chains, supply chains are linear. We make, we take, and we dispose. So we created simulation first to help companies transform to become circular. And in the most recent development, we've come with a simulation focusing on sustainability. And there, impact and change behavior are important, but perhaps even more important in those kind of transformations.
Yeah, thanks Hans for this introduction to also introducing today's topic. I think this is a very nice visual that also represents this. So yesterday we spoke already about impact. Anything to add on with the visual on the right side here?
Yeah, well, this is behavior change. I'm not a behavioral change expert at all. I tend to stick with supply chain and value chains, but I do see also from a personal perspective, change takes time and you go through various stages. And on this particular slide, it starts with awareness, right? You need to first become aware of that something is happening or is going on or should change until you get to the final stage where you actually have that change behavior.
Yeah, and I think we are confronted with this also a lot in our work, working with people in teams and trying to also then create an impact and change behavior there. So that's
absolutely,
an exciting topic also from that perspective, which drives us very briefly also to what we do. So today the finalists start with all the supply chain trainings that we did across the year on different topics, but our scope goes broader. So that's why also today we will dive a bit more into sustainability, which is a topic that we've added over the past, I think, 4 years, more and more to also our mission and our work. So this is just a slide showing the other business simulation games that we have and the different learning experiences that we can create with it. But with this, with no further ado, I would like to introduce our guest of today, Frans Pannekoek. Really great to have you here. Frans is currently the owner of Blue Note and former COO, Chief Operations Officer at Marqt, and also of Tony Chocolonely. I think you joined the company when you were 17 Tonys, as they are called, and
yes,
you probably don't know how many there are today.
No, I'm not entirely sure, but I think over 240 or 50 or something like that. Yeah, and quite a big jump.
And you were in the company for 7 years, right? So you kind of really were part of that roller coaster from a small entity to now it is internationally operating company.
Yeah, it's been a real roller coaster. I started with barely 2 people in my team, and when one of them was on holidays, I had to do the order entry myself, which had been quite some time since I've done that.
Those were the days.
Luckily, the company grew as very fast, so I was able to delegate those operational tasks to the team quite soon. But it also gives a nice feeling, right? That you're back in the trenches to start working together with the team and build something something special.
Yeah, great. Well, we will definitely dive more into your experience.
We're more about that.
7 years later on in our conversation. You also worked at different roles during 9 years at Unilever.
Yes.
So also very nice experiences there, which I also hope we get some time to dive a bit into your experience there. So I think it's nice to, again, it's a week focused on supply chain management, but I think you built the bridge very nicely between supply chains and sustainability. So again, very glad to have you with us. And maybe a first question to you to dive a bit into, so also what Hans mentioned. What is your experience with learning by doing and developing people through experiential learning?
Yeah, I think it's quite important to, if you're, I'm currently also working as a lecturer at the Business School of Tilburg University. And there I experienced firsthand that when you present something or when you tell something, it only has so much effect. I think there's a nice formula that says the effect of your message is the content times the acceptance that people have of that content. And by fully experiencing something, makes you accept it a whole lot better than without it. I've been, I actually joined the Fresh Connection way back in 2010, maybe 11.
Then you were still at Unilever.
I was still at Unilever while playing the game. But we were immediately very enthusiastic because there was not something like that in the marketplace at that time. So we signed up. And I'm not entirely sure. I think we won. Okay. Well, let's stick with the story that we won. But I'm not
very well.
But and I think that's quite cool. There's a little bit of competition, but it simulates reality, and in that way, experiencing it. Yeah. I think that's really important.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for sharing. With that, that's a nice bridge to, back then, I think 2010, the early years of also the Global Professional Challenge, which I think was more focused in the very early stages on the Netherlands only, right?
Yeah, it actually, the very first challenge was in 2008, and then we started continuing that, 2009, 2010, yes, but that was a challenge. That's how we brought it to the market, actually, to create visibility, and this whole gaming itself, there's not so much new about that, but using business simulations in a gaming and training environment, that was relatively new, especially since we also do this team-based, because if you want to change supply chains, value chains, that cannot be done by one person. There's so many stakeholders and people that have an influence. So you need to bring them together and have them collaborate.
Yeah. And nowadays it's truly global, so this is just a slide showing a bit of our track record, but if we look at what we asked the finalists on Monday, here we see on the left side a map of all the participants, of all the finalists of this week, where you see, of course, a lot in Europe, but also from Africa, from Asia, from South America, from North Americas. Maybe some I'm forgetting. We even saw a few on South Pole. I think they just missed the dot.
There some polar bears that also participate.
Who knows? But a truly global event and audience, also from many different companies. And this, of course, we cannot do this on our own. So there's also many training partners involved here. So we, of course, have our own network of companies that we work with across the globe. But we also, you see here the country flags at the bottom. We have a strong training partner network, I think around 60 training partners. And
in total, And
you see the names here and the logos of the ones that also collaborate with us to bring teams to this global final. And that's, of course, also really worth mentioning because we couldn't do it on our own. So again, as just a quick recap, who are these finalists? So they went through, you see it on this visual, which looks a bit like a face. You see the two yellow eyes, which are the public and in-company trainings, which are the starting point of the challenge. And the best teams from these trainings then make it to the final, which is taking place this week. And actually, this is not everything. So this looks, as I said, looks a bit like a face, two yellow eyes, a little red nose. But there's also a very brightly smiling mouth and also a cherry on top, because there's more to it. The finalists who make it to the top. So today we will find out who will be the three best teams of this final. So the three winners, they will actually win a tailor-made for them supply chain management masterclass, executive education masterclass at Cranfield School of Management. We really built that together with Cranfield School of Management, focused on the one hand on supply chain management, but we also weaved in sustainability because it's an increasingly important topic, and we'll get back to that also in a second.
Can I also join the winners? Looks interesting.
You'd like to be there?
Yes.
As a lecturer? Oh, well,
I can. I would like to learn.
I would like to learn. Yeah, well, I like that.
We'll have to make some phone calls, but let's
see what we can come up with.
See what we can do. Yeah. So yeah, that's what we have in mind for the winners, and that's what we will also reveal today, who those winners will be. So really looking forward to that. The award ceremony will be in a couple of hours, so really looking forward to that. But besides that, we are this international audience, and we would like to really also get a feeling of this event is taking this whole week. So how did you like yesterday? For that, I would like to ask you to join us on Mentimeter. You can go there either by scanning the QR code that you see on the screen, or also by going to menti.com and entering the code that you see at the top of the slide. And you can already share with us, what did you think of the third day? And we got a first very good answer, I must say. She says, awesome. That's great to hear.
Of course, that's what we like to hear, yeah.
The answer here is partially from finalists, partially from viewers and supporters. So the one that says high complexity to manage, that's one of the finalists for sure, because indeed we came up with quite a complex setup or configuration of the business simulation game. We can really tailor it to different learning objectives, and we can even mix them together if we want to. And that's what the finalists are facing. Teamwork and execution. Teamwork is key in this for sure. Fun. It was amazing, and the most hardest one, well, that was a bit the idea.
That's what we try to do by design each year, to in a final come up with complex content. But I also like the comment fun. We try to have this sweet spot between fun and earnest content. So
yeah,
good to read that.
Yeah, I see one. The game is too easy. All right.
All right. Yeah, that depends on who you ask. I think when we look at the teams and how they perform.
Yeah. They don't like Pressy. That's the new product they had to launch, right?
They had to launch a new product, a product family called Fresh Pressy. It's sort of an Nespresso style pad that you could use at home to make your own fruit juice.
Well, too many insights to go into all of them. I see some saying it was very challenging, others say it was a piece of cake. So from A to Z, but really nice to see that feedback. Looks very positive, so that's of course great for us to see, because that's what we have in mind, of course, when setting up this week. And then diving into the topic already of today, what comes to mind when you hear the word sustainability? So just plug in your thoughts. It's a word cloud, so we will also see the words that are plugged in the most will become bigger than the others. So there will also be a bit of a hierarchy. So please let us know what comes to mind when you hear the word sustainability. And then we can maybe also pick up some of these mentioned topics and words later on in the conversation. I see nothing appearing on the screen yet, so also requires some thought, because
it's a serious topic.
It's a serious topic, and it has quite a scope. Not important is the first one. All right, we can certainly discuss that today. Circular, yeah.
Oh wow, that's
a key element there. Food loss, very connected to the experience in this global professional final, because the finalists are managing a fruit juice manufacturing company. Survival, yeah, that's I think a piece of the equation. And now it really starts moving around. We see already in the middle, people and planet. Yeah, I think those
the
are
the words not important really triggered the other answers, I think. After that, it became more.
Someone had to make a start, right?
Yeah, someone had to make a start. The contrarian in the room had made the start. Really good.
Make the world a better place. People calm down. Yeah, SDGs, energy, realignment with stakeholders, consistency, that's a nice one. Joint effort, yeah, it's also a cross-functional effort. You can't just put in place a sustainability department and think that can solve everything.
No.
Is somebody already also saying revenue or margin or profit?
It says costly, it says profit always.
Okay.
I see revenue is more important. I see realignment with stakeholders, objective to the future. Yeah. I think we will pick up many of these comments that you also see, which is nice, really different ideas of what it entails, right? So that's, I think, one of the key elements of sustainability.
It has many faces.
It has many faces, has a big scope, which is one of the challenges, I think.
And there's also still some denial going on, as we just saw.
Yeah,
true.
Ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss. That's it's sometimes very true. And CO2. So actually, in the end, the three most biggest words that were plugged in the most were CO2, planet, and people. And I think we'll dive into all of these today. Thanks a lot to everyone who's with us online for sharing. And this is the visual that I think links very much to what we've just seen. This spider web that you see on the left between people, planet, and prosperity. And then for each of these three topics, there's different metrics within it. So here you see just one visualization of this. And on the right side, someone who's juggling different balls. And that's, I think, what it's all about. It's juggling different priorities. What do we focus on? How do we move forward? And that will be one of the topics.
Yeah, and if you look at the balls also that you're juggling, I think you also sort of need to make a conscious choice, because there's so many balls that you can keep up in the air.
Yeah.
If I think about the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, I don't see a juggler who can keep them all 17 up, right? So you need to be conscious about what balls do I pick. What balls do I start juggling? And I also understand from talks that we had before, also with Frans, it makes a big difference where you start and how effective that is for your type of industry, for your type of business.
Yeah, very true. And this is actually this challenge of juggling not only these three P's of people, planet, prosperity, but all these different metrics is the challenge that we've gamified in our newest business simulation game, the Triple Connection, that we maybe also can dive into a bit into our conversation, because Frans, you've also experienced it, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was able to do the train the trainer course. Yeah. It was really cool.
Yeah, nice. All right, and then moving a bit towards now getting the finalists ready to get started with their last round of decision making. Quick reminder, you get a certificate of achievement at the end. Make sure to enter your first and last name properly, so that it shows up properly on the certificate. If you don't do so, it has your wrong name. So
that would be a pity.
In your own interest to do so. That's a final reminder for this. And then we have the ranking for round 3. And with this, I would like to hand over to you, Hans, to announce how did the teams do.
Thank you, Noah. Yeah, there were lots of changes. It was even a bit. The outcomes had even some drama in them, I think. If I looked at where results went, and I will go through that in a brief summary that I will start with. So what we saw is that, of course, we always check of all the teams together, where does the average go? What is the whole group? How are they performing? And yesterday I could say that they had a positive average return on investment, but after round number 3, they have all gone into, not all, but the average has gone to a negative number, minus 6.9. So okay. That tells you that although I saw someone in the word cloud saying for them, too easy perhaps, right? Well, not for all of them. Absolutely not for all of them. And also if I look at how many teams were able to improve their score, 20 out of 47 teams had a better score. Round 3 was better than round 2. But yeah, the day before, 29 teams had a better score. So it was harder. And another metric that confirms that is that 21 teams now have a positive ROI in round number 3. But those were 31 teams in round 2. So. Okay. And if I also looked at what the difference was between the highest and the lowest score, the spread of scores, it was 94%. So there were quite deep negative scores and also very good positive scores. So that sort of took care of a concern of mine, because after yesterday I thought, yeah, maybe it is a little bit too easy. But after the round number 3, I was actually my concern was gone, because we have a good spread of scores, being very positive, but also being quite negative. And at the same time, we have a new high score. So that also underlines this larger spread even. So that's what we've seen. So if we then look at the top 20 of scores of all these 47 teams, it looks like this. So what you now see in terms of ranking on your screen, I rank them by their weighted score. So as you know, we're going to do 4 rounds in total. We only include rounds 2, 3, and 4 in this weighted average. Round 1 doesn't count, has a 0 weight. So round 3 is now finished. That's what you see, but we rank the teams by their weighted score across rounds 2 and 3. So this is place 11 to 20. Quite some good names there again, as we also saw in the word cloud that we had on our first day that you demonstrated. And then we move on towards the top 10. So let's see where this score, you should literally see the scores climbing. We're already in the 20s when it comes to round 3. And then we move up and we go higher and higher. And then we go into our top 3, and our top 3 is dominated by 2 teams from China and 1 team from Japan. So you could say in Asia, people are performing really, really well. We even have a high score now of 37.7%, which is off the charts. If you would ask me up front, is such a score possible, I would have questioned it. Yeah. But I see it, that is really, really good. So that's good to see.
We are with finalists in the end, right?
We are with the finalists. So that from what I see in the scores, that's confirmed that these are literally the best players on the face of the earth that deal with the Fresh Connection. They manage the company to the best of their abilities. Then also looking a bit ahead to what we have in store for round number 4, because we're not done yet. So it's not finished. So what do we have for day 4? For today, I confronted the teams as of round 0 with limited bottling line capacity, a limited warehouse size, and gradually we took away those limits, with the storyline being we have shortages all over the place nowadays, right? We have staff shortages, we have component shortages, so we need to really make an effort to take those limits away. And now we're finally in round 4, so you could say in our head, we have 2 years, we have played for 1.5 years, we're going into our final half year. Limits are now gone there in terms of capacity. We also have now, you could say, different product market combinations that we are delivering. We have product families and client groups that differ if you pay close attention. And teams can also go into so-called supply chain collaboration. So yeah, it's now all or nothing. Remember, round 4 has 50% of the total end score in terms of weight. So still a lot can change. And then we're going to, of course, talk when the round opens, we're going to continue our conversation with Frans, but let's also then see what it means in terms of details and just a little hint towards the teams when it comes to the product families that I just mentioned and the markets that they are servicing. I'm not giving away anything here, but I would pay close attention to the product market combinations that you have that can really help you in further refining your strategy. And come to the best performance. So in summary, especially focusing also on the elements where teams can go into what we call collaboration options with their suppliers, with their clients. They can even outsource their outbound warehouse. These are the decisions in detail. So there's vendor managed inventory going on from a supplier and client perspective. Like I said, sufficient capacities now in operations. And supply chain, there's no new decision making going on, but considering everything that's there, I would definitely recommend supply chain to take another look at the settings they've chosen so far, because that may be different. So that's good luck to all the teams. Yeah, that's about it.
So we have a couple of minutes left until 5:30. Should we continue the conversation or let the teams already?
Let's continue the conversations until 2:30. Yeah. And then, but let's not forget about it. Like yesterday, we almost went past the 2:30 mark. So I'll be at the ready here to open up the round anytime it needs to be open.
Sounds great. And I think one of the first nice topics that we can bring into is we had carbon footprint enter the equation of this global professional final on Tuesday.
Yes.
So, right. The finalists had to deal with that.
Yes.
We put this visual here on the screen about carbon tunnel vision. So something you would share about it, or should I?
Yeah, I put it on because when we did our preparatory talks with Frans the other day, he made a very interesting remark, and especially something that we had not thought about 10 years ago when we developed carbon footprint as a piece of content for the Fresh Connection. Because Frans said, and based on his experience, when you make choices about sustainability, first of all, there's a lot more than carbon footprint on its own. Everybody focuses on that if you're not careful. We also saw it, I think, in the word cloud. Mm-hmm. Was one of the words that stood out. And dependent on the type of business that you're in or the type of industry that you're in, carbon footprint to focus on that might not even be the most effective. Yes, so that is what you brought to the table. So and you mentioned that as what is material. I think that's the word that you use.
Yeah. Would you maybe like to chip in to that?
Sure. No. So let's the COP27 is happening as we speak, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
in Sharm el-Sheikh, people are talking about climate change, and one of the most important drivers is obviously carbon and the CO2 emissions that we are generating with the planet. So it's very important, and it is life-threatening. It will change the. What scares me the most is that it will be an effect that is unclear, and it can amount almost like the bullwhip effect we know very well from our own profession, that all of a sudden will hit you in the face where you have not expected it, or where or when you have not expected it. And that's what I think we're heading for right now. So don't get me wrong, it's one of the most important ones. The point I was trying to make, and it's basically in order to help people to find a way. So if this huge sustainability issue is happening, where do I start?
Yeah.
What do I do? Then the term or the idea, the concept of materiality is quite important.
Can you just share, because for me the term materiality was quite new until we started launching the triple connection. Can you just share a bit?
Sure.
What does this abstract term mean?
So the materiality has been around for some time, but I can definitely see that it has been maybe within the communities of the CSR people and the sustainability department people, which is not wrong. But if you ask me, I think that supply chain people are the ones that are very well positioned in order to address these types of issues. So the materiality matrix, and check out whether or not your company has one, says something about how closely related to the primary business process of your company or your industry certain elements are. Whether that are the SDGs or whether that are ambitions that you would like to pursue, so that you can decide how do they relate to something that matters to your business. It's almost like an investment, if you ask me. Usually there's this phrase, right, that when you want to make an investment, you have to put skin in the game. The popular way to say about it. And I guess that's the same for climate or for sustainability change. You have to put skin in the game. So it has to matter. First of all, because then you get really happy when it works, but also it needs to be a bit painful when it doesn't work. Because then you get an extra incentive, obviously, to make it work instead of just taking it for granted or being happy without.
And then it becomes a side note. So
yes. Or it becomes something that will end up in the sustainability report on page 13 in the annual report. That is nice to read, but has no impact on the course of the company whatsoever. And don't get me wrong, page 13 of the annual report is something everybody should read. But I think that especially us as supply chain people, we can do a lot more than that.
Yeah. Would it be maybe nice to now give two showcases based on the two showcases we use in the simulations? So the example of the fruit juice manufacturing company in the Fresh Connection that the finalists have to manage, and the chocolate drink company that you have to manage when working with the triple connection, the sustainability game.
Yeah, well, what I understand from materiality, right? So carbon footprint or carbon is perhaps not so material to a fruit juice business. Right? So as opposed to the triple connection that we developed, which is about chocolate drink, and why is that difference there? And that was also enlightening for me, is that you have to buy and use a lot of milk. And as we know, milk from cows doesn't come out of the factory, as some city children think.
No.
Right, so and cows of course have a huge effect on carbon. So that would be, and in that sense, you need to make smart choices. And you need to make the right choices.
And I see it's almost a minute to 5:30. So should we open the round?
Yeah, I will open the round. Let's not be too late.
We see in the chat.
Let's do it 2 minutes early.
Good luck to the teams.
Yeah, good luck to the finalists. This is your last round, by the way. So this is where it counts. It's the round with the most weight.
Yeah.
So the simulation is open?
The simulation is open. We made up for the 2 minutes that we lost these last 2 days. We were twice a minute too late. Now we're 2 minutes early. So we balance out.
Yeah. Excellent.
Great. Well, so the finalists are going to the simulation and taking their decisions. We'll stay here. We will not take decisions, but maybe discuss some decisions or discuss some topics. We started with,
I hope,
with carbon and should you focus on it, yes or no? I think it's not a general question, but I think the question is, does it matter for your company in your context? And that's what the term materiality really is all about, and I think a very, very nice starting point. Moving on to another.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Moving to maybe a first topic. In your experience at Tony Chocolonely, so it was a 7-year roller coaster. What were the most striking experiences, or the main? What was your most impactful experience for you in those 7 years?
Yeah, well, there were a lot. Maybe it's good because we are in such an international company, an international community. To explain a little bit about Tony's Chocolonely, because we are world famous in the Netherlands.
Good point. Yeah.
But we're definitely not for sale in all the countries that are.
Although I did see you the other day in the US. I saw you at Whole Foods.
Yes.
I saw Tony Chocolonely.
Yes.
I think at Trader Joe's I saw Tony Chocolonely. I was really, wow.
No, it's
going somewhere.
Absolutely. Also good to mention, I'm the former COO, so I'm not with the company anymore. And it was founded, and that's interesting to mention, in a television program actually. So there were journalists that were making a program on claims that food companies were making. And in one of those episodes, they found out that there were child slaves being traded in West Africa to work on cocoa plantations. And then they spent a lot of time investigating that particular topic. Mm-hmm. In the end, even resulting in the fact that they brought to the market their own chocolate bars.
These journalists?
Kind of to show that it can be done. That is how it came about. So I think one of the things that I take away from my time at Tony's quite a lot is that this genuine inquisitiveness about what's really going on in your industry, what is really happening at partners along the chain, is something that is very worth your while to find it out. It's also quite complex.
Yeah.
And it's time consuming. But if you are looking for an impact and want to make a change in that industry, I think it's the only way to go about.
I think it's just an assumption, but I think if you, as a journalist, you start researching the topic and then it sort of grabs you, right? Then, but if you then are push it so far that you start a company, you cannot only be profit driven anymore, and because there's more that comes more to the table.
Yeah,
there's an idealistic streak there as well. Must be,
yes,
because this, like you said, this is going to take time. This is not an easy road ahead. Yeah. And by the way, you're competing with you come from Unilever yourself, but of course there's very large food multinationals that you then also start to compete with.
So it's a nice story that they started out also in relation to these bigger companies. So at one point when they found out that this child labor was kind of quite well known within the industry and that it was a serious problem in the industry,
it was known, like sort of accepted. So sort of we can't do so much about it, or it's there.
It was like Harry Potter, like a topic you shall not be named.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But everybody was quite aware that that was happening, and there was even an industry protocol that was signed by all the big chocolate companies called the Harkin and Engel Protocol to U.S. senators. But basically, not that much had happened in order to actually tackle the issues. So at one point, the journalists were trying to see whether or not they could maybe sue these bigger companies in order to appoint them the consequences and the responsibilities that they had, finding out that they thought, okay, we will be outpaid and outspent quite fast if we are starting to attack these companies. And then they come up with a quite clever idea that really raised the awareness on the topic in the Netherlands, is that they said, okay, so if you know that a crime has taken place along the chain, and you buy a good of which you know that a crime has taken place along the chain, you are liable for fencing. So it's a criminal act. Yeah. So when you buy a TV set from the back of a truck in an alley, you can assume it's been stolen, and when you buy it, you're liable for fencing. So they reasoned, we know that a criminal act, because child labor is a criminal act, is taking place in Côte d'Ivoire and in Ghana, 2 countries where 60% of all cocoa is coming from. So when I eat chocolate, I'm actually liable for fencing. So what they did, and it's an hilarious scene, there's a movie made about it. One of the journalists, he starts eating 17 different types of chocolate, and then he calls the Amsterdam police to say, I would like to report a crime. And then the lady says, what kind of crime? And then he says, yes, I'm a chocolate criminal. And then the lady doesn't take him that serious. But they take it a lot further in the end, because they found out that they're not suing the bigger company. So maybe they said, maybe we can sue ourselves. Maybe I can be charged with a criminal act by this act of eating these chocolate bars. And that law, that court case, is something that was on Dutch television and was broadcasted all throughout. They even went to Côte d'Ivoire to take testimonies, because the judge had said, okay, interesting case, but you need testimonies. So they went to Côte d'Ivoire to take testimonies. Then also the judge said, maybe you can bring a witness. So they asked one boy to come to Amsterdam to testify.
Wow.
So this was quite a big thing. And in the end, it is also very interesting. The judge ruled that the journalist was not going to be convicted because of precedent, because it would be very complex to have all Dutch people being liable for chocolate criminality, basically. But another very interesting part is that there was no traceable link, no causal effect between the work that the boys that they had been brought forward that as testimonies and witnesses had, the work that they had been doing on the plantations in Côte d'Ivoire, and the chocolate bars that the journalist had been eating. And for me, as the supply chain manager, that became core to how I wanted with my team to build this supply chain, so that we would be able
To track and trace.
to have this direct relationship and make sure there was a direct link between the activities of cocoa farmers in West Africa and that their beans that they harvested would end up in Tony's chocolate bars.
And the reason for this cause and effect not being visual is because the different farmers that also all pulled together, and then you don't know where it's.
It's a processed product, so you have it with a lot of processed product, and the common way is that nobody cared, so you can just buy any. It's a commodity, so the one cocoa bean is not different from the other cocoa bean when it comes to quality and price. That's why the price is so low, because there's no difference. Farmers get always the short end of the stick and always the lower price. And if there's certification, then usually, like fair trade or Rainforest Alliance certification, it's about what you call mass balance principle. So the mass balance principle works the same as with green electricity or sustainable electricity. So when you have green electricity in your house, you actually don't get green electricity. You just get electricity. And with your additional premium, you fund a solar park somewhere or a windmill or whatever. So the same is for cocoa, for certified cocoa. So when you have fair trade chocolate, not all of them, but some of the fair trade chocolate, it doesn't contain fair trade chocolate beans. It doesn't. It's just that with the extra premium, you're paying for projects, very good projects, but they have nothing to do with the community where your beans are actually coming from.
Nice.
And we said, okay, if you visualize this mass balance as a big heap of beans that's in between us as buyers and the farmers back there, then you don't see them, right? Literally. They're behind this big heap, which makes it a little bit more easy to, take a bit of a distance. To say, well, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. And by slaying that heap, by saying, hey, I want to directly source from you guys, you cannot walk away from that relationship and your responsibility. So for us, this traceable link became paramount to the way we are, and we developed and changed the traditional supply chain for cocoa for Tony's, basically.
Okay, nice.
And Tony's became perhaps even more popular than you think, because it's also popular in China. I just read in the YouTube chat, apparently.
Yeah.
That's
they
good
can
to hear.
purchase-
That's good to
and
hear.
they can purchase Alibaba. Okay, then you have quite a channel. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But you have worked, so you have also worked at Marqt, which is a
Yes.
food retailer, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and also I think in general, usually with positive impact. If you think about positive impact and the connection to risk taking, well, linked to sustainability or supply chain management, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. What I see is that we mentioned it already a little bit in the beginning, that people are currently, I would say, quite afraid of making sustainability claims, and that has to do with the fact that people, especially in media, in social media, are very fast to respond to certain claims, especially when they are when not everything is done well. And what I see is that a lot of people are doing a few things well, and when I ask them, so why don't you share that with your community, with your consumers, with your customers, then they say, no, because I want to do everything right before I show it to the world, because if I don't do that, then I will get hammered for not doing everything right.
Yeah,
and that risk aversiveness or that risk avoidance is, I think, also a problem.
it's a bit of pity, actually, right?
Yeah, because then all that good initiatives, they stay hidden,
Yeah.
and they are not, you miss out on the kind of reinforcing
And how can you cope
loop.
with this?
In order to make sure that if you bring it out there, then people can start helping you actually
Exactly.
in making those issues even better, instead of keeping it all to yourself in order to avoid the fact that maybe somebody calls you a greenwasher.
Yeah. And companies who are in this situation, so they have a fair point, I guess. So it's a risk for them if they don't want to be too much exposed. How should they approach it? How can they deal with this?
Yeah, so there are two things that I would plea for. One is something that is quite common actually in the tech industry. In the tech industry, no product, no app is put into the marketplace fully developed. They go with a minimum viable product.
Yeah. Okay.
And what happens is when you put a minimum viable product in the market, people start using it, and your feedback loop goes way faster than if you keep it all to yourself. I would argue you can do the same with your impact improvements or your impact innovation, if you like. So if you just keep it to yourself, you will be the only one that knows about it, and the limited feedback will then be generated. If you already put it out there, there is a risk, but it's the same with tech, because if the app is not working good enough, people might leave, but it's the same risk. But if you get the feedback loop going, you might speed up your innovation and implementation of your actual product way faster. So that's one thing I would argue. It takes a bit of self-confidence to do that. It takes a bit of gutsiness to go that way. It also takes that you need to be very genuine about what you're doing, because if you are faking it, then consumers will sniff you out quite soon. Another one, which I think is very interesting, is that people, especially companies, when they are claiming these things or the results they are making on CO2 or on social elements or on animal welfare or on forestry or whatever, they tend to only present their successes. And I don't know if you have friends that only share their successes.
I do.
Usually the friendship doesn't last that very long, because you want to feel in a friendship you share stuff that works and you share stuff that doesn't work, because that makes you human and credible that you are striving for something that's not easy.
Yeah. No one is perfect, right? So
no one is perfect. So what I would argue is share your successes and tell the stuff that you not have done yet, maybe you failed at, or that you're having difficulty with. Because in that way, you will get a lot more credibility or favorism in order to keep going, instead of that you get hammered about just showing the bright side of the problem.
Yeah, so tell the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, really nice insight. I think that's I think a very good way forward.
I think if I'm allowed, there's
Yes.
That's why you're here.
yeah. So it's not so much related. Well, it is related to this topic, but this problem of what is called by a very great black writer called Adichie. She wrote great novels, and she has an interesting TED talk that goes about the danger of the single story, and that's basically about what we're saying here. And the danger of the single story is not, as I just mentioned it in sustainability, that you are not saying everything, but the danger of the single story has also to do with prejudice and racism. Mm-hmm. Because if people are only looking at one single story, it's a black person, or it's a white person, or it's a female, or it's a male, that's not the whole story. Mm-hmm. And the danger of the single story is that this story is not incorrect. This person is black, or this person is a female. It's just incomplete. Yeah. Because there's so much more to tell about somebody. And that's the same with your sustainability effort. So watch the TED Talk, it will blow you away.
Great. Yeah, nice analogy and nice hint. I will definitely do so later on. Good point. Also, maybe a nice moment to tell the audience, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, like one of you did. So we will also pick up these questions during our conversation here, which is actually, can a company move on after being labeled as greenwashed? How hard is it to do so?
Of course. So it's a very hot topic, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and rightfully so, because currently there are so many claims that people would like to make that this greenwashing is definitely a risk. Yeah. It also hampers the companies and enterprises that are actually really want to make a difference, because others are just faking it. So I think it's almost like a human relationship, that if you are making a mistake, that doesn't mean that you are done for forever.
No.
What you should do is definitely come to terms with what has happened and why did this go wrong, and fix it. Yeah. And that will take a lot of time, energy and resources. And if you are not willing to put that in, then you might not recover. Yeah. No, you might not recover. Yeah. Because in today's age, consumers and customers there's so much information available that it will be hard to keep that hidden. Yeah. But I'm a very half full glass kind of guy. But it will take quite some effort to fix it.
There's another question from the audience that picks up on this, which is whether you think that multinationals, larger multinationals, with the current situation that we are in and the current legislation, whether they feel obliged to implement sustainability already, or whether we haven't reached that moment yet, or maybe where are companies at, and do they also want to make an impact, or is it more legislation driven or more impact driven? That's, I think, a bit where this question is.
Yeah, it connects also with what we spoke about a little bit before. Right? So do you do this because you see the opportunity as a company? At the end of the day, most companies are for profit, right? So they also want to hit the top line and the bottom line in a positive way, or do you do this because governments or regulating bodies sort of force you to, or is it a mix? Yeah? So I can imagine it's a mix.
So I believe very much. So I'm a company guy.
Yeah.
So I don't work for the government. So I believe there's a responsibility for companies in society, and I believe they should take it. I think that maybe a few, but hardly any societal, economical, or cultural change has come from the government. It comes from artists, it comes from companies, it comes from societal groups, it comes from people who care. Mm-hmm. And if you are in a company, and then you care about your product, you care about your customers, you care about your consumers, and you care about your suppliers, without who you cannot deliver your product. Yep. And it maybe sound a bit fluffy, but I think that's very important starting element. That's a way to make sure that you do the right stuff. And it's hard because it pays off not to care about anything. Externalizing costs and reaping the earth and polluting it is still cheaper than not doing it.
That's a bit of the cynical side of it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So it requires quite some endurance and character. So I've been working in branded companies my whole life, and where I think is a very interesting opportunity is connecting the dots of the total value chain.
Yeah.
So not only within the supply chain, which you should do, but including the whole value chain up to consumer preference of the brand. And if you are able to leverage the strength of a brand, preferably by stories and supply chain developments and sustainability efforts within the brand, you might be able to ask a little bit more than the average price.
Because that is what Tony has done, right? Their chocolate is on average more expensive than...
Yes.
And customer or consumers were willing to pay that premium.
Yes.
How did that come about? Because in the beginning, Tony was a no-name, so...
Yes, no, so I think that and Tony's is an example, but there are other great examples as well.
Yeah, of course.
That have created a brand that people would like to buy from and stick to. And I think that has to do with the fact that what the company or the brand does is in line with what it is saying. And the claims that these companies are making is one thing. And what I think is important, supply chain people are very well positioned to actually deliver on those claims. And connecting those dots would make it feasible to, well, ask maybe a little bit higher price, maybe not exclusive, but just a little bit more, so your margin is a little bit better. It will hopefully create loyalty, so that there will be more sales over time, or a keener interest in new innovations of a certain product, which might be even more worth than a slightly higher price on current portfolio. And in the back end, it allows for a little bit more margin to invest maybe in some of the things that you want to change.
Yeah.
Because you cannot deliver on sustainability efforts only by efficiency.
Yeah.
No.
That's not possible.
No.
Some of it can, and you should, but some of it also requires real investments. And that investments then deliver you, hopefully, impact.
Yeah.
And if you then can share that story to the brand and with the brand to consumers, then that might also deliver you some value of the brand.
Brand value. That's the thing that you're trying to build, of course.
Yes.
Brand value, and that takes time. That's not overnight.
No.
That's impossible.
No.
And I don't know if you relate to that, but I remember there was this documentary on television 4 or 5 years ago about the Fairphone and how that struggle.
Thanks everyone for your patience. Part of doing things online is also that you are dependent on technology, and right now we had some internet connectivity issues. So we're back. The stream is back. Same stream, that's also always a tricky part. The business simulation game, I think, is also back, but we saw some comments, so please keep us updated. We are in any way working on it. Do you remember where you pick up last time, or should we continue with a new question?
No, so I think that we talked about Fairphone.
Yeah, true.
Fairphone is a company that is trying to address the issues in especially mining certain raw materials for that are inside your phone, like gold and cobalt and stuff that is at some point we run out of. But also the fact that you cannot repair your current phone, right? So they have made a phone that you can actually repair some of the elements instead of having to replace the whole phone. Especially the way they are backtracing their chain for certain raw materials that they use in their phone, like Tony has done with cocoa, is I think very inspirational, because you really have to understand where these materials come from, how does it work, what's the issue at hand there, what's the materiality of the issue that's at hand there, and how do you change that? How do you write or design a protocol that you can start implementing as a small player in the market to do so? And they've been quite successful also in the fact that some of those protocols are now actually adopted by some of the more larger phone building companies, and signing up on some of these collaboration principles, how to do it better in that way. So by showing the good example on Fairphone level, it doesn't stay there, right? You can be inspirational to other bigger companies because you have kind of paved the road a little bit in order to do it in a right way, and then you can maybe challenge the others, saying, hey, why, if I can do it, why can't you?
And we're speaking here now about chocolate industry and about phone industry, two very different topics and industries and sectors and also supply chains. But so in a certain way, these sustainability elements and issues and topics and challenges are applicable to in many ways to industries as well.
Yeah, I think so, and like I mentioned, I left Tony, so I had some time to contemplate, and also because I'm now teaching a little bit, I've come to the notion that what I would like to plea for is supply chain resonance.
Okay.
So resonance is a term that comes from engineering. It's kind of matching by external and internal vibrations. Mm-hmm. But it's also in sociology. It has been coined by a way, how do we cope as human beings in this fast accelerating and changing world in such a way that we can achieve some kind of happiness for on our personal lives. And this supply chain happiness, I think you can do with building a resonant supply chain. Yeah. The first thing you need to do, we talked already a little bit about it, is you have to make sure that you view the total supply chain. So investigate end to end, bust the silos that have been created over time.
That really resonates with us, busting silos. That resonates with us, because that's what we're all about. So
you bust the silos, make sure that everybody works on the same chain. The second one is that you have to implement core or collaboration principles that change on the materiality matrix. Yeah. So, for instance, in cocoa, you have to pay a higher price because cocoa farmers are very poor. Yeah. And because they are poor, the kids have to work on the plantation and they don't go to school, and that sometimes relates to a modern slavery. Yeah. So, but for each industry, it could be a different one. Yeah. The third thing I would reckon is, and we also spoke already a little bit about it, you have to build credibility in what you do by making sure that you have data, which is also something that really relates to what we're doing right here, and storytelling. And that's what I was saying. You need to tell the whole story. Don't only shine with your great results, be true and honest about what's happening and what you still need to do. So the credibility is the third one. Yeah. The fourth one is what I think is a more behavioral element, and I call it self-efficacy. Yeah. Self-efficacy is a combination of self-consciousness and self-confidence. Mm-hmm. And you have to apply that, because when you want to make a change, you will encounter resistance and skepticism all over the place. You will over the place.
There's naysayers everywhere. So.
Naysayers everywhere. People don't believe it. When something failed, they will tell and stick it to you that it doesn't work. So you have to do it again and again. And it also, in that way, you have to be that entrepreneur and outspoken and a bit gutsy to make moves and see what happens. Go out there with this minimum viable product, get that feedback, which it will be much of it will be negative, use it and then improve.
Yeah.
And last but not least, and we touched upon it as well, what we need to do and need to learn, we have to take responsibility for the problem, not the company's problem. What my problem is with ESG reports, with PPP reports, with SDG reports, is that it's about the report. And if you fix the report, then the problem is fixed, but it's not.
Yeah.
There are horrible examples in cocoa where if cases of child labor are found, certain buyers will fix the problem by not buying cocoa anymore from these communities.
Yeah. You make the problem perhaps even worse.
Well, your problem is gone
Yeah.
because you have a clean sheet again. There's no child labor in your chain. No, that's correct.
No, but the
But
child
I
labor is still existing.
fully agree, Hans. They make it worse
Yeah.
because it teaches people and communities to not talk about it, to hide it, and to make sure that it stays that way. If you want to change, we sometimes, it's a bitter joke, said we need to make child labor traceable. We have to find it in order to attack it.
Expose it. Yeah.
Yes.
It needs.
Yes, and it's hard. And I've been in West Africa many times, which I think is also very important. If you want to meet and encounter the entire chain, you have to be there. You have to go there. That's the beauty of our role, right? The marketeers, they write stories, but we are in the factory.
Yeah.
We are making the contract.
Yeah.
We are shaking the hands of farmers. We look at how things look like. We know when a price is high, we need to negotiate it down, but we also know when a price is actually too low. And when the price is too low, there's always somebody or something that is paying that price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So do you think that this is a...
To finish it, to taking that responsibility, is very important that you feel that that is what you need to address. You should not avoid the issue by, not buying anymore.
Yeah, then you circumvent it.
You should face it head on. That's material. That's where it hurts.
Yeah.
And that's when you need to stay and fix it.
Yeah. So to summarize, we look at materiality, what really matters for your company and your context. Supply chain resonance, you called it.
Yeah.
Credibility, tell the whole story.
Yeah.
Self-advocacy. So
Efficacy.
Efficacy. Yeah.
Yesterday we spoke about being curious and courageous. I think that goes a bit into that direction.
Oh, no, absolutely. So I like those terms. It's still the Keuringsdienst van Waarde. It's a very Dutch program, but there are programs, and it still airs on TV, and they still make great programs where companies are asked very obvious questions about where their product is coming from and how does it work, and it's sometimes painfully hilarious what then happens, and where people have no clue where their product is coming from and how it works. And that's something that as supply chain managers we need to take full responsibility for in order to improve it.
Yeah, so that was the last one, then taking responsibility for the problem. And I think what you mentioned also in terms of a bit the role of supply chain professionals, do you think from your past years of experience at Tony's Clothes maybe before, and also what you are contemplating right now, do you think that the role of supply chain operations people has developed, has changed within companies?
Yeah, I do. It has been changing ever since the conception. Somewhere in the end of the 90s, I think, the whole concept of supply chain management start to evolve. I think we have been in the fact that we need to talk about value chain a lot, and here value still has a lot to do with money. So the gross margin and value, and so I think we're in an era where there's an interesting new element coming to it. Maybe you can call it the true ROI, as you guys are calling
I'd like
it.
to mention it in the fresh connection, or in the triple connection.
In the triple
we call it
connection,
true ROI. Yeah.
I like that one because it's then not only about value or return, but it's about true return, which includes your impact on what's happening all around your supply chain. And traditionally, we are also as a team maybe a bit more back office, a little bit more on the cost side of things. With value, we have been a bit more coming forth, but now that more salesmen, marketeers, but also entrepreneurs and CEOs want to make claims about how the company is doing good, it's really important that there are teams that are actually delivering on those claims. And I would argue that supply chain teams are very centrally positioned in order to actually deliver on those claims. Like I said, the supply chain boys and girls are actually visiting the factories. They are making the contracts. And they know whether or not they are pushing a farmer or a supplier or a co-manufacturer actually into the red, or that they keep them as an equal partner. And you don't want to pay too much, but you also
you want to pay a fair price.
You don't want to pay too less, because then something else that maybe not that visible will.
And it will bite you. It will bite you as well.
Absolutely, and that positioning is more in the center of the company, and it's also the place where if the front end makes claims and they are not delivered, then we're talking greenwashing here, right? This is what was mentioned. So the credibility of those claims is for a big part in the hands of supply chain people. And when you look at when I look at companies now, I kind of see a kind of quadrant where there's companies that have no interest and they don't make any claims, and they're also not delivering on it. They don't care. And these are, well, you can figure out maybe the petrochemical industries, the oil and gas industry. Those are companies, but also in many industries there are just companies that are riding the current wave, making money, and they don't care.
And that's it, yeah.
Then you have on the top right, you have companies where I would argue the making and the claim and delivering on the claim is fully in sync. So my personal favorite is Patagonia. Patagonia is, in my objective, the best example where the total company, their business model is fully in sync with what they want to achieve for the planet and for the company. So whether you come with an idea in supply chain, marketing, finance, or IT, as long as it's in that sweet spot, the whole company will be in sync and work with you in that way.
Yeah.
So then there are two other quadrants. One quadrant is where the front end wants to make these claims and supply chain is not delivering on it. So then there's this greenwashing kind of situation happening where at some point also supply chain people need to take a stand, right? I mean, at some point you can just raise your hands and say, hey guys, I'm not doing this, so stop claiming it, or pay me more so I can start fixing it really instead of just saying about it. And then there's a fourth quadrant, which I also think is very an interesting one, is where in supply chain there's already happening a lot of good stuff. Because we are good guys and girls, right? We sometimes just take the high road and we do it well.
But we don't
say it. And then the front end is not making these claims, which is a pity, because it leaves a lot of value untapped. And by speaking out and showing a little bit more about what actually is happening, the front end might be very surprised and very happy with what's actually happening. And then you don't need to change anything. You just need to write about it, which is easier than changing.
You need to set up the PR to bring it to the outside world.
And this quadrant can also, when you start in a new role or when you look at your current situation, it's interesting to understand where you are, because then it depends quite a lot on what your course of action needs to be and where you need to talk and who you need to change and influence in order to make more impact.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, to some extent, the past minutes that we discussed also answered the question that came in about what can be the roles for leaders, so managers, C-suites, in delivering the claims they make, right? So those were the five elements that you mentioned.
Yeah, so I think that in delivering the materiality is very important, and I think that you should take responsibility for the problem. Yeah. I think when you make claims, those are the two that you want to. If you want to deliver on the claims, those 5 strategies that are specific for supply chain are important, that you understand the end-to-end chain that leads up to these claims, that you need to change some of your collaboration principles in order to change it. It has been done for decades in this way. If you want to make an impact, you need to change something, right? You pay more, or you pay less, or you pay somebody else, or you bring your sourcing more close to home, or you have to think about what's material, whether it's fruit juice or cocoa. So the credibility is important, generating the data. You have to be out there in order to make the change happen, and then you have a shot at it.
Yeah, that last word actually resonates. Now I use the resonates.
That's good.
It's on the table. But but that's a bit of more of a philosophical question, perhaps. Do we still have a shot? That's sometimes also when I speak to friends and family. Some people are sometimes quite cynical and say, "Yeah, well, that doesn't still matter, right? Are we?" And I think no one has the real answer to this. But in your view, do we have a shot at making this change as a globe? That's a big thing, but as a society or as people, what is your take on that?
Well, there's the risk of being gloomy.
Yeah.
And I sometimes get that. On a global scale, with the COP27 happening as well, but also when I was in West Africa, when I visited the plantations and the farms, there were many times that I was very proud and happy about. I could see the change that we were implementing on this scale we were at, which is a very small scale in the total industry. I was proud of what was happening. But there were often also moments where I kind of called it that I was hit with the macroeconomic axe, because then you understand in this macroeconomic field, we're so far from where we need to go that it gets you down quite a bit. And that's why it takes resilience and self-efficacy, not as a person, but also as a team, to say we are doing the right stuff. These are baby steps, but we can make this change. And I feel a large responsibility, and then I'm talking to you and me, right? I mean, I have 3 kids, but they didn't ruin the planet.
No.
Our generation.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed it. And we were ignorant, but we are not ignorant anymore.
No.
So if
there's no more plausible deniability here.
No. You cannot, as a colleague of mine used to say, you cannot unknown. Now we know. So now you have to act on it. And that's why I feel personally very strong that responsibility. Unfortunately, in our generation, especially white males, don't. So I feel a very strong responsibility to show the good example, but also to talk to these guys and see whether or not I can help them in that
some
journey.
Activism is needed.
Absolutely.
Some activism is needed.
Yeah. So I'm like I said, I'm a half full glass kind of guy, but that takes some enthusiasm and help from others every now and then as well.
Yeah. Can imagine.
That's very true. And I think it also changed in a certain way that it's not anymore about future generations, but it's very much hitting all of us.
It's
right now.
The impact is
and maybe the bit more sadder truth is that at some point it has to maybe hit all of us and really start becoming painful until there's
that is I can imagine that you say that, because if you look at society as a whole, well, you've seen it, I think, with COVID, suddenly the drama was there, the tragedy was there, and we were able to act, and so
yes.
But if this tragedy is slowly developing, if it's like a train wreck in motion, we see it, but we don't act that fast, right?
What I thought was interesting, what you are now seeing a little bit, is a concept that is called sunk assets, not literally as in the rising of the seawater level, but sunk assets. So there was a brilliant documentary on the Dutch TV, sorry for the international viewers, where the host, he visited so the Netherlands are below sea level,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So he visited a new neighborhood that was newly built at 6 meters below sea level. And he asked the new inhabitants, and they bought a house between 500,000 and €1 million, which is high-end, high-class neighborhood. And they asked them, did you consider buying this house with the fact that you know that it's 6 meters below sea level and that the water level is rising? And it was very interesting because some of them they didn't, some of them they did, right? They did realize that. And the question is then, is your house a sunk asset at some point? Because you live in it for 20 years. Who will buy your house after 20 years? And it was an interesting parallel to a Scottish community. I think it was Scotland, I'm not sure now, where there's very close to the sea and there was a dike there. And the government had said, we're going to fix this dike for the upcoming 20 years, but then we stop.
Okay. Yeah.
So we will not maintain it anymore. So these people are sunk assets because the water will come.
Yeah, no matter, yeah.
So in the beginning, the whole village was for sale. All the houses were for sale, but nobody wanted to buy it. Of course not. No, who wants to buy a house that will run underwater in 20 years? But if you think about this concept, at some point, investing in oil and gas will be a sunk asset as well.
Yeah.
So when are we going to stop building a oil platform that has to be on the water for several years, and at some point we might not need it or it will be prohibited, and then you need to stop.
Yeah.
You're not going to invest in it anymore. It will be interesting to see how that the dynamic will work. So maybe our financial investments long term will show the first signs.
Yeah. That a long term might factor in.
Yeah, because in a very economical sense, right? Yeah. Because you will not, again, you're not going to buy a house if you know that it will be, left to nature in 20 years. Why would you do that? Well, you can live in it for 20 years, but then you will not be able to sit.
And the parallel then to companies is they will hopefully no longer invest in assets that will become sunk assets in 10, 20 years time.
Yes.
Because there's no residual value or whatever.
No.
Value there.
Yeah, nice analogy or nice concept actually.
That's a nice analogy.
Yeah.
And which speaks to the economic mind, right? Because my previous plea was a little bit more about that you need to take responsibility as a guy or as a father, but this is very economical, that at some point, you want to return, but if your return is dicey, well, then it becomes interesting.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for sharing. Another question from the audience. Do organizations face internal difficulties when they try to implement a new sustainable supply chain strategy?
Yes. Next question.
I was going to say, I think that's a big yes.
Yeah, of course.
One of the main risks that you should be aware of is never ask yes or no questions such as.
No, but it's a very good question, obviously. So the getting alignment in your supply chain, same goes for your company. Again, what I don't like about ESGs, PPP, and SDGs is that it's a dazzling array of topics, which also makes it sometimes incoherent. So if you don't have any alignment within your company and the marketeers are working on animal welfare and you are working on CO2, it might not be the same goal. And that's of course not happy. So there's a challenge here because I love the idea that you need system thinking, right? So it all relates to each other. So in the end, you need to do everything. But at Tony's, I think what worked really well is that you pick a very specific material topic and put that on top. So semi-jokingly we said, when people call us and say, how are you going to do on CO2? We say, when we have fixed child labor in West Africa,
we're going to start with that.
You'll be the first. So it doesn't work like that, of course, but it does give you a very clear perspective on what is the most important. And more
you can focus on that.
You can focus on that. And more concrete on deforestation is a large topic, which is more related to CO2 within West Africa. And Tony has been doing some on that, but our main goal has always and still is working towards eradicating child labor and modern slavery from the chain, which is a slightly different topic, or slightly different topic with different actions that you need to undertake.
Yeah.
So having this focus so that you can have this internal alignment is, I think, very important. And I would also challenge also the people in the game, when you are looking for what is now material, ask the sustainability department, for sure, start there, but also ask the buyer and ask the marketeer and ask the CFO and the CEO what they think is material. Yeah. And they might not all give you the same answer. Yeah. And then you know what to do. You need to align.
Yeah, then we're back to busting the silos, right?
You need to align. Yes.
Yeah, you need to align.
Yes.
That really hits me, because this classical topic, even if you go back to the simulation that people are in now, which has that started with vanilla supply chain approach, where you need to be aligned, but on these very important topics like sustainability and like circularity or whatever's going on in the supply chain, you could almost give the classical answer.
Absolutely.
Alignment is key.
Yeah.
Alignment is absolutely key.
Yeah.
The interesting dynamics is that over the course of time, we have cut up the supply chain and optimized the different segments of the supply chain. We even have created walls between the different segments in order to make it more easy to rip off the other party.
Give them conflicting KPIs and so on.
Because that worked in the system of generating as much value on the short term per person as possible. What happens then is that there's a total alienation of what's happening in the entire chain. Yeah. So you have to glue it back together.
Yeah.
In order to see what is happening, actually.
I've literally sometimes heard it said in training courses that people, they are with us in the training, it's also about KPIs and coming up with a cockpit that promotes team behavior, and because KPIs on its own as a topic. What gets measured, what gets done, what gets rewarded gets repeated, and we have all these quotes about that. And the person in question literally said to me, "I know this is not the right way of going. I know. But if I look at my own company, that's what I'm rewarded. So I would be sort of a thief of my own wallet if I wouldn't do it like this." And the person in question knew exactly what was going on.
Then it becomes tricky, right? Like if
that becomes tricky.
It's a notion that I'm so the resonance I told you about comes from the sociology, and one of it's supposed to tackle alienation, and I'm very fascinated by this notion of alienation, because it is all around us, right? I mean, we are alienated from the products and materials that we are now using.
Consuming.
It's one-time use. When it's broke, you toss it. You don't repair anything anymore. Clothing not, computer, laptops, but even tables are disposable, right? So technology is becoming, and transport has also alienated us. I mean, you can meet people virtually all over the globe, right? Time and place become very fluid, and we can travel easy, and that is also alienating us from what is happening all around us. But last but not least, and that triggered me with what you said, we're also alienated from ourselves and our working life. So when you think about it, and it's very common, but when you really think about it, it's actually horrible that somebody says, "I know, and I don't want to do it, so I'm doing stuff that I don't want to do." Well, that's ultimate alienation.
I get some sort of reward for it.
And you don't have to, because you can leave, right? You can. And young people are doing that. They're not per se leaving, but they're not joining you. They are not joining companies that are so alienated from reality or from the personal and working life balance that they don't want that anymore. And personally, I think it's important, because if you want to make an impact, one of the things that you cannot really determine is the time you spend. And that's, I think, most important. Where do you spend your time on? Because that determines who you are, and also whether or not you will be happy in the end. And same goes for your supply chain. Where do you spend your time on?
Yeah.
Is it negotiating another cent of another supplier or something else?
Yeah, that links to a nice question I wanted to ask you for a personal note. So I think you are supply chain expert by education.
No.
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 So how did
A lot of us aren't, by the way.
No.
A lot of supply chain professionals aren't.
Can you share a bit more on your journey? So where you ended up in this in the different roles to create an impact connected with supply chain management. How did that all come about?
Yeah, no. So I don't have a supply chain background. I actually studied sociology.
Okay, and that's where also the connection.
Well, I do what I like about sociology more than so psychology is very well known within companies and business life. I think more time for sociology, because sociology is more like how do groups, whether that's team or departments or companies within a group, behave towards the culture and groups in the company. I think that's quite relevant in our current day and age. I also ended up adding political science to my studies and international collaboration, which led me to India, where I worked for an NGO. And it's circling back to what I did at Tony's. It makes quite a lot of sense, because I do believe in the enterprise as a good force for making change. But with Tony's, I was able to also, combine that with a genuinely intrinsically motivated company to change. And so I think that throughout my career, the common thread has been innovation. So I like new things. So I'm not an engineer, but I also like tech innovation. We haven't talked about it at all, but I do think that's a very important one.
For next year, you're going to get an invite again.
So, very closely related, if you ask me, also to sustainability efforts, especially when you want to make scale, but also obviously the innovation that is required to make, the complex puzzle between running an enterprise in a profitable way, scaling up a company, and delivering on these impact results, because it's not a trade-off. You need to do both. At Tony's, we grew 50% year on year. So availability, cost, and quality, that was my main job. and the other main job was making sure that we do it by delivering more value to cocoa farmers in West Africa. And that requires new thinking.
You speak about innovation that also can sometimes lead to changing strategies. One of the questions from the audience was, why does it take so long for companies to change strategy? And one of the questions I want to also ask you, but also the audience, so we have prepared a Mentimeter question for that. What are the biggest barriers that companies run into when implementing sustainability in their value chain? So again, call to the audience to share some insights here. Not sure how many are with us live right now. We had some interruptions in the stream.
Yeah, and most of them that we had in the beginning are also playing, right? So
true. But still, let's just get a few insights.
So let me give a more provocative answer. I think what it takes is for people like me, the most people that are running companies, white 50-year-old plus guys, they need to go.
That's
what they need to do.
Yeah.
Bring in a diversity from all kinds of angles.
They need to go.
Yeah, that's a very to the point answer. Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
And then
I think the world will be more beautiful.
There's the activist streak, that's what you spoke about. Yeah.
No, I struggle with that because I am one of those guys.
yeah.
And I don't want to stop working, right? I don't know about you, but I know that when I'm in the room, it's a factor, and you can't limit that, in my opinion, in any other way than by not being there.
But then stepping out,
Than by not being there.
And maybe that's also an ambition for next year's Global Professional Panel, to try to create as much diversity from all the insights that we bring to
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
So maybe not invited next year.
No. Let's not get me. No. I'm in favor of that.
Sounds good. Well, we see some insights from the audience, so thanks a lot. We have around 40, 50 people, so thanks all of you for joining us again or waiting through the couple of minutes where we had some internet connectivity issues. But I see some responses here about costs being main barriers, resistance to change, budgets. So that's, I think, a nice one also that we tried to bring into the business simulation game. So yes, you can implement sustainability or different strategy, but you're always within certain budget restraints, and you have to look at your costs.
Shall I put in another one that is
Yeah, please.
a provocative one? Growth.
Growth. Yeah. I think that's.
So one of the things that is now luckily more spoken of, but still in limited, is degrowth, which I think is very necessary.
Yeah, you mean that we're always after growth, and then almost, and
Yes.
maybe we should not.
Yes, and the addiction to growth, but also the assumption that we will also grow. I've never seen a chart of company plan with the line going down.
Yeah. Oh, true.
Never.
No.
But it's so unrealistic
Yeah.
as hell, but it doesn't work like that. And luckily now degrowth is becoming more of a topic, which doesn't mean that that your complete company needs to be in degrowth, but I can definitely see that certain categories or certain businesses need to be planned for degrowth. But now in our current day and age, it's really still
that's
a
unheard.
taboo, right? We can't even think about it. Everything goes ballistic.
Yeah.
But I think that if you
still one of the big elephants in the room, I think. Less and less maybe.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, we need to also within Tony's that was not a topic to be discussed.
Yeah.
That was not possible.
No, I think at most companies still that's not a topic to be discussed, and maybe that could also be. You just made some minutes ago you made a remark about people from a supply chain role moving more from being considered a cost to delivering value, right?
Yeah.
Which I think gives you a very different type of seat at the table. But maybe the idea here is the same. The fact that you no longer go after growth all the time, but you try to increase value, and value that comes in many shapes and forms, not only financially. And then the discussion might also get another sound, might start resonating better.
Yeah.
So I can totally see where you're coming from there.
Yeah.
I was in an event last week where Shinta Oosterwaal was there. She just wrote a book together with Kees Klomp, Thrive it's called. And she mentioned, I didn't know that if you look back, that probably somewhere in the 60s, the Netherlands kind of achieved the ultimate balance of prosperity. So that when you divide it over all the people and how this value or prosperity was divided, it was just right.
Yeah. So you must.
And from there on, it only got worse.
Income inequality and
Yes.
wealth inequality
And so having enough is something that we lost that to say I'm fine like this.
Yeah. I think it's a very nice topic to bring into this sustainability conversation, because it's, I think, oftentimes not spoken about, and even if we become more sustainable, if we keep growing and not maybe at least decouple growth from resources extraction, then we will even if we
yes,
do
this whole I don't know if I translate it properly, but there's this thinking about the economy of having enough. And there's even this anecdote I think about a fisherman. So there's this millionaire having a holiday and going to the beach, and he sees this fisherman fishing, and he starts talking. What are you doing? I'm enjoying my fishing, blah blah blah. And then this millionaire says, "Well, you should buy more fishing rods so you can buy more fish. You can buy more fish, you can gain more money, and at some point you can buy a ship and start fishing and have more ships and have personnel." And become rich, and then at some point, you can stop working and enjoying your time. And then the guy goes, but that's what I'm doing right now. So.
That's a nice one. Yeah, I see. We have to also slowly but surely wrap up. So maybe a couple of last questions. I see a nice one from the audience. So let's try to cover it in a concise way. So yesterday we spoke about supply chain resilience. and the link to growth. What is the link between sustainability and resilience?
Well, the clear one is obviously that the planet is being reaped from all kinds of raw materials. So if you want to be resilient, you have to take that into account. Or if you want to deliver on sustainability, then that's something that you have to take into account. That it will run out at some time, or that it will be too costly, that it becomes a sunk asset or a sunk investment, if you like.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that is a quite clear link that you need to be aware of that, and that there's an end to what we actually can, what the planet can give us.
Yeah, indeed, and also with the complex structures that we have in place today and the disruptions that can come in there. Yeah. Sustainability, I think, also can be one of the solutions to.
We actually run against resilience issues, or not having enough resilience to that could even be more and more forceful hurricanes, or more often happening.
Yes.
Rising seawater.
Yes.
All these things are happening around us. It's simply going on.
One of the last question I wanted to bring up. We spoke already a bit about the Fairphone model, where their practices and their approach and the network was helping other companies to take similar paths.
Yeah.
I think there was also you mentioned Tony's open chain, right? That's what it's called.
Yes.
Can you share a bit more on that? Because I think it's a very nice note to end on.
Yeah. So I think that there's a similar idea below it, which comes down to taking responsibility for the problem. Is that if you want to take responsibility for the problem, you don't want to compete on the problem. Semi-jokingly, we said we're not competing with others on child labor.
Yeah. Okay.
We should not do that. So there is a pre-competitive space where you can collaborate with everybody, suppliers, NGOs, governments, but also with competitors.
Yeah, you're all trying to get rid of child labor.
Yes, and we should compete on the product. What it looks like, what it tastes like, what functionalities it has.
That's where you want to distinguish yourself.
Yes, that's where you want to make the difference. So if you take that one step further, then you can say, okay, then if that's not important, well, if the collaboration is more important to us than competing on it, then we should share it.
Yeah.
And that's where Tony's open chain came from. And we said, okay, on a pre-competitive level, we are willing to share our knowledge, our tools, access to our network, information and collaboration at cost price to everybody who is interested in joining the mission.
Yeah.
Because that is addressing the problem with more people fighting child labor, with more people trying to pay a living income for farmers. And then we're going to compete each other the hell out of the supermarkets on labels and brands and funky flavors and whatever. But that's not where we're going to compete. And I think that is, I was at the start, which was really cool to do. It's a local Dutch retailer that their private label brand switched to open chain, so their cocoa is now sourced in a similar way as the cocoa of Tony's Chocolonely. And just recently also Ben & Jerry's, the ice cream maker, has joined, meaning that also their cocoa and their pints will be sourced via the same material principles that Tony's is applying, and in that way also helping to make an impact together.
Brilliant. I think that's a really nice note to end on.
Sure.
Thanks a lot to you, Frans. Thanks a lot, Hans, as well. We are now really excited to go into the award announcement, which will start in about half an hour, more or less. We need, of course, some time to calculate the results. At 4 o'clock, that will take place. So in about 15, 17 minutes to be precise, we will close the simulation, calculate the results, and then share those results about 15 minutes after that. You as an audience, I would like to thank you really for joining us here online, following the conversation. Maybe some of you have also joined the past days. So really, thanks a lot. Really appreciate that, and feel free to share your favorite quotes or insights with your LinkedIn network or wherever you feel that's appropriate. So thanks a lot for joining. Thanks again to, especially to you, Frans, for joining us here in person.
Thanks for having me.
Sharing your insights. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Yeah.
and we'll be back soon with the
Great
award
answer.
announcements in this same stream. So see you in a bit. Thanks.
Thank you.